So if we want answers to the carbon cycle, if we want answers to E. coli, if we want answers to mad cow, the answers will always come from a freed up marketplace that addresses the needs of the hour. But when that freedom to leverage innovation is bound by bureaucratic harassment so that innovation can't see the light of day, the real innovation never sees the light of day, and what we get are more and more regulations piled on top, trying to deal with the problems that would be dealt with from bottom-up leadership if we freed the entrepreneurial, innovative sector to access the marketplace with the real answers for the problems of our culture. All right. So the fact is that, such a position, what's funny about when I've said this, and it's great to even be appreciated in California, what's amazing about, what I've just said makes sense. Like deep down, intuitively, it just makes sense. But then you have the, but what about the guy that's going to build something obnoxious right next to me? I don't want to live next to a dairy. They stink. What happens is that, there are many ways to attack this, but what I'm getting to is that if we allow embryonic, aesthetically, aromatically, sensually romantic farming models to be placed in our neighborhoods, they're not obnoxious. You see, the mental picture of obnoxiousness that all of us have with a confinement dairy, a Tyson chicken house, a pesticide-laden, 100-acre field of cabbage or lettuce, okay? That picture that we have, that is not a community-embedded agriculture. That is a very neighbor-unfriendly kind of agriculture, one that doesn't think about carbon, that doesn't, it's as disconnected from its earthly umbilical as people are who don't know how to make hamburgers. See? Or think that milk comes from a carton. Or, corn comes from a can. Actually, corn comes from a subsidy, but that's another story. The point is, we have really moved away even from being connected to our own communities and decision models to where we want to outsource the police force that the neighborhood used to do in its own ministry, its own right in the neighbors. Well, then people ask, well, if we allow some of this stuff, we got to be careful. Somebody could make a pot pie and somebody could get sick. Well, that's true. That's true. Because nobody's getting sick today. I haven't heard of any food recalls. All that, U.S. approved sticker on everything. Every corporation that gets the U.S. approval is clean as the pure driven snow, right? Just like putting a backwards collar on a man makes him righteous, right? I think it's pretty amazing. I think it's pretty amazing that we have allowed each of us our 3 trillion member internal community. Talk about disconnected. Each of us has 3 trillion living bacteria and critters inside of us. I'm convinced you went down the average street and asked the soccer mom, "Ma'am, do you realize there's 3 trillion bacteria inside of you?" Say, "What? Cut me open, pour in a Pine Sol, get, antimicrobial. Let's wash this stuff out." Every one of us is responsible for what to feed this 3 trillion member internal community. It's a great Far Side car. In my mind, I can just imagine, what, 3 trillion? That's that's like way more people than on the face of the earth. You know, if I told you you had inside of you as many living organisms and critters as there are people in Santa Barbara, you would say, whoo, that's a lot. And if I said California, whoo, that's a lot. What if I said 10 times million people on the face of the earth? Whoa, that's a big community. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, meetings going on down there. Wonder how many regulations they've got. I don't know. But I'll tell you, you know what they're regulated by? They are regulated by what they've been living on for a long time, and they have not been living on Twinkies, Cocoa Puffs, and Mountain Dew. And my question then is to our U.S. Food Police is, by what authority have you decided that raw milk is unsafe and compost-grown tomatoes are unsafe, but feeding your kids Twinkies, Cocoa Puffs, and Mountain Dew is safe?